Welcome to Forecast Lab for August 7th. Continuing the third day of rain from Tropical Storm Debby, rainfall totals well into the 10 to 20 inch range. One good way we can track these amounts is with the Community Cooperative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. This is a 3-day total from the 4th through this morning. This goes up to about 8 o'clock this morning, 10 to 20 inches around Lake City, Florida. And as we go north into Savannah and Charleston, many amounts in the 12 to 16 inch range. We are not done with the precipitation. These are the precipitation products from the Weather Prediction Center running from this evening all the way through Saturday evening. We can see totals running 5 to 7 inches from Lumberton, Fayetteville, on up into western Virginia. And those have a average recurrence interval up to 5 to 10 years. So we're looking for the potential for significant flooding in the mountains, the Shenandoah Mountains, anywhere in the western part of Virginia, and into parts of West Virginia as well. Here you can see the history of Debby going back 36 hours. This is yesterday afternoon, so definitely some strength in this thing. Currently at 5 p.m., it's still a tropical storm, sustained winds 60 miles an hour, making it a high-end tropical storm, central pressure 995 millibars, and drifting to the north at 3 miles an hour. And looks like the heavier precipitation moving up north of Myrtle Beach and starting to cross over into North Carolina. To see what's going on in the storm, we definitely need to be looking at the METAR plots. Those pressures fairly low, down to 29.44 there. It's going to be at Georgetown, but the wind field rather subdued. The highest that I'm seeing, maybe 26 knots up there north of Myrtle Beach. And let's see, on the south side, 25 knots, so not too bad there. The main effects are going to be, of course, rain, with the possibility of severe weather. There's going to be a possible outbreak, a low-end outbreak tomorrow as we get heating in parts of North Carolina, so there could be a low-end potential for tornadoes. There is some concern this afternoon around Wilmington on up the North Carolina coast. They have just issued a tornado watch for that part of the country. And there you can see the risk for tomorrow from Wilmington on up towards Richmond. And there's the tornado potential, 5% probability within 25 miles of a point. In the northeastern U.S. this afternoon, the calm before the storm. As we go into Thursday and especially on Friday, there's going to be big-time rains all the way from the central Appalachians on up towards the Adirondacks. That's going to be the corridor of heaviest rain, and that should push into Canada as well, especially around Montreal. Flash flood watch is already in effect from the Carolinas into Roanoke, Lynchburg, Richmond, Winchester, Hagerstown, and parts of the Shenandoah Mountains right in there. And the storm is already underway. These are going to be orographically induced with heating and moisture in place. So that's going to be the amplification of the precipitation pattern, and it's just going to get worse going into tomorrow. For the southeastern U.S., yeah, we've already covered that thing. That's Tropical Storm Debby starting to come back inland. Let's take a look at the projected paths. There's the official forecast produced manually by the forecasters there. Looks like officially landfall is about 2 in the morning. Then that moves inland as a tropical storm and weakens into a depression around the Greensboro and I guess Roanoke area, and moving into Pennsylvania and New York for Friday and Saturday. So there's the official track and the interpolated track, adjusted slightly for the current movement. Here's the GFS summary tracks, the high-resolution deterministic model shown in red. So it's going to be this thick red line right there. And we've also got the interpolated track lying a little bit to the east. Also the orangish colors, those are going to be the ensemble mean. That thick one, that's going to be the primary ensemble forecast. The interpolated forecast, that's going to be a little bit to the right in here. And we've also got the control run, very hard to see, but that's going to be this track right here. That's going to be the low-resolution ensemble without the perturbations. Let's take a look at the ensemble members. The spread here gives us an idea of the confidence of the forecast, and it does diverge quite a bit beyond the first day. So could see tracks out into West Virginia. Also a possibility of a track going into the lower elevations of the northeastern U.S. So a lot of this remains to be worked out, but there is pretty high confidence of a track going to the north-northwest towards Charlotte and Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and of course some of the heavier rain expected currently to be in this area right there. There's a look at the consensus models, which use not only the GFS but also the European, as well as some other ones. And of course, some good information from the track and advection model, TABD and TABM. These don't really look at the storm itself, but they look more at the steering flow, and you can see that pretty much tracks similar to the GFS and the consensus models. Anyway, let's move along. All right, moving to the west, we do see dry advection coming into Georgia, so finally starting to clear out some of those rains, but we do move into the heat. Heat advisory all through the western Florida Panhandle. And as we go further to the west into Alabama and Mississippi, we start picking up those 100-degree temperatures at Jackson, Gulfport, Meridian, and Monroe, Louisiana. Heat wave already starting in Texas. The National Weather Service in Fort Worth has gone for the excessive heat warning west of Fort Worth, Graham, Jacksboro, Breckenridge, and Palo Pinto. Looks like a wildfire is already broken out there. Temperatures there expected to be up to 107 this afternoon, 107 at Childress, 106 at Abilene, and 102 at DFW. Heat advisory all through this area right here. Heat indexes approaching 110. That includes Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Abilene, Tyler, and Oklahoma City. There's the location of the wildfire about 10 miles southwest of Throckmorton. That's going to be out in range country. And it's certainly visible on the Dyess Air Force Base radar. That's going to be it right there, and we switch over to the correlation coefficient. Shows up very nicely, so that's going to be right in there is where that wildfire is. In the northern plains, we do pick up a frontal boundary. You can see that northerly flow there in the Dakotas. And we do have thunderstorms in Colorado. Quite an active weather pattern there. Let me show you the SPC outlook. And there it is, a slight risk for the Nebraska Panhandle and northeastern Colorado around Sterling. These storms coming out of the Fort Collins area, moving eastward, and they could aggregate into a cluster as they approach Kansas, Goodland, and we could see numerous storms moving into that part of the plains for this evening. Yet another hot day in the southwest, but temperatures have come down quite a bit. Phoenix expecting 105 today, Las Vegas 110, which is cooler, Tucson only 94. So we don't have any heat advisories in the deserts. But as you move into the Mojave area, they do have the excessive heat warnings. Also in the San Joaquin Valley, looking for 110 at Hanford, 109 at Fresno, 107 at Bakersfield. And on the other side, in Yukon, expecting 111 today and 107 at Mojave. San Francisco Airport, 69 this afternoon, so they're pulling in that marine layer, moving in through the Golden Gate. And in the northwestern states, still some hot spots as far as the wildfires. Red flag warnings for southwestern Wyoming, eastern Idaho, and the Wasatch Mountains. Gusty west winds, hot temperatures, and relative humidities down to 10% there. And some spotty air quality alerts in Oregon for wildfire smoke, including Crater Lake, the Blue Mountains, the Oregon Cascades, and around Omak, Washington as well. In Alaska, a wet pattern as southerly flow comes in from the Gulf of Alaska. We do have a flood watch through Thursday afternoon in the eastern Kenai Peninsula. Another 2 to 3 inches expected there. Seward, located right there under a flood warning. And on the other side, you can see some interaction there with the Alaska Range. Strong downslope flow, producing strong winds out of the southeast, 60 miles an hour from Denali Park to Healy and Fort Greely, Alaska. Up in northern Canada, you can see some wildfires out here north of Yellowknife. They are going to be having increasing heat problems going into the weekend. Temperatures expected to be up into the 70s and even the 80s as far east as Coral Harbor. And just a quick look around Canada, British Columbia, Alberta looking pretty good. Don't see much wildfire problem there. In the Canadian prairies, a very active frontal system. This is going to be a cold core low with an occlusion at the surface, the main baroclinic zone down to the southeast in Ontario. And shifting east into Quebec, cold northerly flow, but we will have the remains of Debby coming up north, and it will turn very rainy here going into the weekend. And let's go ahead and go into the charts for a more technical look. At 500 millibars, the mid-tropospheric chart, this is about 18,000 feet. We do see an omega block across western Canada. Very strong trough across the Canadian prairies, and up to the north, a cutoff high. That's associated with that very warm weather building into parts of the Arctic over the next 3 days. Some evidence of the subtropical high across the southwestern U.S. that's pretty much centered from central Nevada into northern New Mexico. Not enough to shut down that thunderstorm activity. Let's zoom in a little bit and look at the U.S., and we're looking at the heights and vorticity at 500 millibars. We do see the center of the high across the Nellis Range in southern Nevada, and a little lobe right there extending into the Clovis, New Mexico region. There's Tropical Storm Debby off of the South Carolina coast, and as we go to the north, we get more into a positive vorticity pattern. You can see the red shades up there indicating positive vorticity. In other words, there's a counterclockwise spin to the air. In between, this zone where it translates into blue. Blue is going to be the anticyclonic rotation, indicating the influence of ridging, clockwise circulation aloft, and in between, that's where we find the jet stream. So right in here, we would expect to find the polar front jet. There's a diagram explaining what we're talking about. Polar front jet right in here, up to the north, positive vorticity. Down to the south or equatorward, we find the anticyclonic vorticity. And remember, it is all relative. We're not looking for blue to always be south of the polar front jet. We're always looking for decreasing values of vorticity, getting to those anticyclonic numbers, and we want to see the vorticity higher as we go north or poleward of the jet. And just to apply that so you can understand it a little bit better, this goes into Friday, and you can see this one lobe of very high vorticity coming down south and the higher values of wind. If you look at those wind barbs, 50 to 60 knots right there, just south of that little lobe, and that's indicating a enhanced area of polar front jet energy coming out of Canada and the Dakotas. And those areas of enhanced vorticity are important because they do signal stronger jet stream energy and stronger dynamics. This is a model of the polar front jet, and this is not vorticity. This is thickness, the dashed lines, and pressure, which is the solid lines. So we're going to find the jet stream right in here, and where the thickness lines are very close together, that indicates stronger flow in the mid and upper levels. And that's going to correspond to enhanced dynamics around these frontal systems. So those are all very tightly integrated. And when we see those stronger vorticity values, stronger winds aloft, that indicates stronger dynamics feeding into these circulations. So let's take a look at what we're dealing with tonight. There's the tropical storm coming inland into South Carolina. Up to the north, strong cold advection into the Dakotas and into Montana. And that's driving this frontal system down into Nebraska and Wyoming. A stationary front through western Kansas into southern Arkansas, and a lot of that heat concentrated pretty close to that frontal zone. Okay, let's go into tomorrow. A couple of problem areas for tomorrow. One, of course, is that precipitation starting to build. The orographic lift, that's where it's going to be enhanced. The Piedmont region, the Shenandoahs, as we mentioned, and of course, very close to the track of that cyclone. So Wilmington, Fayetteville, Raleigh-Durham, Greensboro, all of that will be getting heavy precipitation. And of course, as we get afternoon heating, the potential for severe weather. That's going to be basically around Raleigh, New Bern, on up into Virginia near Richmond, Appomattox, and Charlottesville. The concern is isolated to widely scattered tornadoes as afternoon heating progresses. And there will be elongated photographs in that area in that deep easterly flow to the northeast of Tropical Storm Debby. In the south central U.S., Thursday is when the heat peaks. Heat wave, Texas, Oklahoma, looking for 107 at Wichita Falls, looking for 103 at DFW, 102 at Oklahoma City, and 103 at San Antonio. In the southwestern U.S., a slight risk of excessive precipitation in Colorado and New Mexico, focusing on the Sangre de Cristos as that easterly flow develops in the rear of that front. Significant rain chances as well in northwestern Mexico, rain almost certain at Santa Fe, with very good chances in Albuquerque and Gallup. Monsoon rains will continue all across the southern and central Rockies through the weekend. Then we go into Friday. Yeah, you can see some of those storms on Thursday night into the overnight hours. And then we go into Friday. Let's pull up the evening chart. Numerous storms once again in Colorado, all through the Mogollon Rim and into Utah. A very wet day as well throughout the northeastern U.S. Expect delays if you're flying into that part of the country. A moderate risk for excessive precipitation in the northern Appalachians, all the way from Hagerstown, Harrisburg, on up into the Adirondacks, up into Vermont, and by extension into Montreal. A marginal risk of severe weather in New Jersey, the Delmarva, pretty close to this warm front due to the continued elongated photographs there, which will allow for supercells and brief isolated tornadoes. In Texas, temperatures start falling a little bit, mostly north of I-20. DFW will be up to 99, Oklahoma City down to 85, Childress down to 92. But down south, another hot day, San Antonio up to 102, Austin 102, and Houston 100. Excessive precipitation continues in Colorado, the Sangre de Cristos being fed by this little nose of moisture coming in from the lower plains. Looking for very high precip probabilities in all of the Colorado Rockies, Durango, Telluride, Aspen, Trinidad, Alamosa. They all will be seeing rain on Friday. Then we go into Saturday. Don't have an evening chart, but that's going to be the pattern right there. The northeastern U.S. expecting remains of Tropical Storm Debby, but a lot of that starting to push out with that developing westerly flow. In the south central U.S., stagnant weather patterns, a couple frontal boundaries through there, but we're knocking a few degrees off the temperatures. The hottest big city, that's going to be San Antonio with 102. Rain chances remain in the Rockies. That's going to be spreading into Utah and western Wyoming. Very good chance of rain at Grand Junction, at Moab, and even up at Yellowstone National Park, up to Butte and Helena. We are seeing a little bit of a drying trend just for Saturday in Arizona and New Mexico. So if you're in Tucson, Phoenix, Saturday will be the best day to do stuff this weekend. Then we go into Sunday. The heat starts building in Texas once again. 100s return for San Antonio and Abilene, and for West Texas as well. Monsoon rains start filling in again. Good chance of rains on the Mogollon Rim and in the Four Corners area. Rain chances about 50-50 out in eastern Kansas and western Missouri. And we take this on into Monday. Rain chances continue in the Rockies, storms in the Ozarks, and then on Tuesday, continued wet in the Midwest region, the central U.S., and monsoon weather continues out west and in Texas. We're going to be seeing 100 start to build in once again. Probably see those excessive heat warnings around the Wichita Falls area once again. And there's the remainder of the run. Looks wet in the Midwest and around Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi. Stagnant in Texas, more monsoon rains in the western U.S. And that is about it. And that's all for this edition of Forecast Lab. Remember that if you like this program, please consider supporting it. There's our Patreon link, and of course you can go to weathergraphics.com and pick up a book such as Weather Analysis and Forecasting and Weather Forecasting Red Book. Books like that are titles that I've written, and they contain a lot of the same material that we go over in these programs. Anyway, I hope you have a great Wednesday evening and Thursday, and we'll see you again in a couple days. Bye-bye.